Welcome again to another episode of Nutanix Weekly, XenTegra podcast with context. We call it that because we try to bring the real world to your table and to your ears, I guess, as you listen along with us. This week's a special episode. I'm out here at Nutanix NEXT in Barcelona, and I'm happy to be joined with two of our regulars, Mr. Harvey Green. How are you, Harvey?
I am pretty good.
And also our resident expert, Mr. Jirah.
Hey guys, yeah, very much in the real world, coming to you live from Barcelona, where we are both jet lagged and over caffeinated.
That's 100% true. The time change has been a challenge this week, coming across the pond and just being vertical at the right times in the day. It's fun though to be at a live event, to be back in front of people. I know, Harvey, you and I have spent a fair amount of time with other Nutanix technology champions. And
Yes.
a lot of them are from here in Europe and faces that we haven't actually got to meet face to face before. That's been pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. It's always fun when we can get together and share time and share space with each other and kind of talk and definitely creates some of the fellowship that we need to keep things fresh and going.
You know, the thing that struck me the most in conversations is how much we have in common, right?
Yes.
We're in completely different parts of the world, but
Completely different languages in some cases.
you and I have had that experience this week.
Not just because we're all Southern.
That's true. That's true. But being perhaps the only native English speakers at our table today doing lunch, with other NTCs, it's really cool to be around people and really realize we're solving the same problems halfway around the world.
Yeah.
And,
Yes.
we're solving it together with our partners. It's good to see a lot of familiar faces, and maybe not as much as when we have it in the States, but there's still a lot of family here, running into people that I haven't seen in years and making introductions to other
Absolutely.
people. At the end of the day, it's really cool to realize that it's about the relationships. And this is a small community, the tech community. We have a lot of different ways that we get involved, and it changes over time, but we see the same faces come back again and again.
Yeah, and the energy is unbelievable. We've said it from the main stage a bunch, but thanks to our partners, thanks to our customers for coming out. It's really amazing to get to do this. Just be in such a large group of folks that are all moving the same direction, right? Solving problems the same way. The amazing knowledge sharing, amazing best practices, right? The best parts of every breakout I've been in this week have come from customers talking about, the way they use Nutanix, about their own journey to get onto it. It's really, really been awesome to be here.
Yeah, I know Harvey and I both spent some time in the hands-on labs, doing some new modules, doing some learning, trying to kind of push ahead.
Yes.
AI has been a permeating topic all throughout the week. And I think it's easy to write that off as, it's just the next buzzword, it's the next thing. But I really love that there's meat to what we're talking about this week when it comes to AI. What was it, a year ago? Nutanix released GPT in a box. This week we get GPT in a box 2.0. And I guess, Jirah, what's the biggest changes to GPT in a box?
So it was really awesome to sit in the keynote this morning and see the demo of that around, rapidly putting models and pipelines and RAG functionality into production so easily, with a combination of automation, of course, the platform, but even the way they highlighted that, the fact that it's OpenAI API compatible, right? So things are going to probably just work just fine with that, helping you get the outcomes even faster, right, with more simplicity.
One of the things, and it's such a simple thing, but one of the things that stood out to me was the fact that you're developing a UI, right? That you're helping us adopt this technology, and that it's not all just driven by command line. Because the learning curve, frankly, for Kubernetes and tiny llama or llama large language models and think it's new to me. It's new to so many people. You know, it's a huge help, a huge step forward in mainstreaming this technology.
Right. Yeah. No, and of course, and we're not doing it alone. I mean, huge thank you to, of course, the new partnerships we've announced this week with like Hugging Face and NVIDIA, right? Like helping, our joint customers take advantage of these, giants of the industry even more, rapidly, right? So that's super, super cool. I even got to learn a bunch about there was a whole section given to the NIM functionality, right? Inferencing from NVIDIA done in microservices, right? That sounded really, really cool. All these ways to get started faster with AI functionality, right? And really that focus on private AI, enterprise API, where of course, training happens usually in hyperscalers, right? Because simply no one has a power budget to train an AI model, right? Stuff on the order of like 15 megawatts for like 3 months sustained, like medium-sized US city. But then, you want to take that goodness and then run it privately, right? Where like it's behind your firewall, has access to your data. And of course, lots of other things we talked about around data sensitivity, classification, right? And ensuring that data privacy. So it's a valuable portion of the new hybrid multi-cloud.
Well, and I'm going to ask this question because it just dawned on me. I mean, so you train a model like Hugging Face, they have these models in a repository where you download them. That's what they're bringing to the table, right? What's a RAG?
Something augmented generation. I should have known you were going to ask me that.
Well, and I guess that's the thing, right? Like we're all learning here.
Yeah.
This is new, especially to traditional infrastructure.
Retrieval augmented generation, right? Commonly, you think of it as like a support bot kind of thing, where it's like what does it know? It knows like every KB article under the sun. So when you ask it a question, it's almost like a search on steroids. Like we know the answer somewhere in this mountain of data. Find me the KB article, and here's some buzzwords around it or keywords, or here's the error code I'm seeing. But it's not just simple text matching search strings, right? It's retrieval from a finite data set, but then augmented generation to say, I think this is the part of the article you want, or this seems to match the scenario that you're solving for, right? So it's the AI applied to a search functionality.
So making it friendlier versus like a Google search where it just gives you a list of results.
It's more like, here are the results. You pick which one is the right one versus I think this is the right one for you. Yeah. So sorry. Yeah. Keyword RAG pipeline, but retrieval, augmented generation.
We're a long way away from ChatGPT. Write me a term paper.
But I mean, maybe not so far away from like what we saw in the keynote this morning, right? Around, hey, blah blah blah. My GPT, write me a blueprint, right, to deploy VMs or services or functions on my hybrid multi-cloud.
Yeah, and one of the use cases that they talked about from stage that I thought was really interesting, and I've heard it on the show floor as well, talking about coding and app dev and assistive AI to generate code.
Totally.
I mean that's a very interesting one. It came up in a panel discussion I was a part of today, and it sounds like adding time back basically to your normal day to day. If it saves you 20 minutes here, you do that every day. That's a ton of time saved in the grand scheme of things. So
so we call that. I mean, I remember on the show floor we called out stuff like top use cases right now. It seemed to be like stuff like fraud detection, search analysis, right? Even support like assistance, support deflection, right? What if you had a robot watching over every support agent's shoulder saying, "Hey, have you tried this fix yet?" But then to your point, of course, co-piloting, which we commonly associate with like say code development and software development and code generation. But co-piloting, I think as a use case broadly applies to so many more roles than that. Like, I mean, sales order configuration, R&D, there's ways that, we can just help reduce human error, right? In general. So the co-piloting use case So hot right now, as they say.
Yeah, this is a broad space. I feel like we're probably going to be talking more about this as more announcements come out in the near future.
That's a great reason to stay subscribed.
I was going to say, yeah, it definitely like and subscribe. It sounds like a great reason. I'm sure we're not done with this topic by any stretch of the imagination, but it's one other example inside of Nutanix of where partnership is alive and well. You're talking about NVIDIA, you're talking about Hugging Face, both of these huge contributions now natively workflowed, easily consumable inside of the Nutanix platform. I think that's the key takeaway, is to know that you're getting these capabilities while keeping things safe on-prem.
Right.
And that's the value that Nutanix can bring to the conversation if you're interested in AI.
It's going to sound so trite. I'll probably say it 10 more times this episode. It's a cloud platform, so you should get the things out of it that you expect from a cloud platform, right? It's really awesome to see kind of that well-roundedness, right? Surprise, you can get things out of it that you get from clouds. So it's awesome to see.
That's a really key point, is that it's a service-based platform, right? When you start looking at the current iteration of PC, there's a very app store sort of feel to it in the current iteration. And so it's easy to plug in more things, whether that's files or NDB or objects, and now AI, GPT, you're bringing things to the masses in a very consumable format.
It's something, I mean, if you've been in a meeting with me, you've heard me focus on it, right? Around even stuff like running VMs is just a service, right? And of course, the derived outcome that so many folks want right now, which is like an alternative hypervisor, but it's ultimately, to your point, spot on. It is just a service that the platform can vend.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and take that swing since you teed me right up. As we talk about alternative hypervisors, as we talk about the disruption in the marketplace, there have been a few announcements from the main stage this week around additional hardware support and around hardware providers that you're partnering with. So you want to take us through those and kind of unpack some of it?
Totally. I mean, I think we might have led off with this, right? Basically, top of the keynote was some maybe not necessarily new, but a dramatically expanded partnership with Dell, and focusing kind of in two primary ways around Dell appliances, right? Making it easy for customers to get stuff. Of course, the co-engineering, right, that leads to customer delight that we're always so focused on, right? We're totally past doing the whole one-sided qualification, right? It's always better for the customer for us to run on platforms that are fully supported and co-engineered by the OEM. And of course, that expands with Dell this week. And then, of course, we also did mention, Nutanix Cloud Platform coming with support for PowerFlex. Watch this space. All right. A lot of stuff, of course, at the conferences is forward looking for things that aren't on the truck today, but are coming over the next weeks, months to come, and that's in that category too. But very exciting times.
Yeah, Harvey, we had the chance to have lunch with the NTC community, and we were joined by Rajiv, the CEO of Nutanix, and Mano, the CTO of Nutanix. We talked a little bit about this announcement during that, and I know certification of other hardware was one of the things we talked a little bit about.
We did, yes. So this is hopefully the beginning. This is the first one. And that is great that we have another option available for customers, another option that allows them to have some of this external storage. We know that is a huge story that's going on, especially with all the disruption in the marketplace you talked about earlier. Customers are looking for options, and I mean, you guys hear me say it all the time. It's like beating a dead horse. I in that position would always want flexibility. And so I'm going to always be looking for platforms, vendors that work well with each other, that partner, that give me flexibility, because the last thing that I ever want running an IT shop is to be stuck in a corner. and not have an easy way out. And unfortunately, that has been starting to happen to some people. So it's good to see some escape routes to get out of those situations.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I really liked that Rajiv responded to a question in the room. And, the question was around, my management wants some assurance that this move to Nutanix is not going to be another Hotel California, that there's an exit strategy, that there's a way off the platform. And it's refreshing to hear a CEO say, yeah, very much. We're designing this so that it's easy on, but it's also an easy off. And it offers you a lot of choices in between. At all the different layers, you have choice.
Yeah, I mean, Nutanix has been that way for a long time, right? We started, with having choice of hypervisor. There was choice of hardware. There's always been choice and flexibility built into the solution, which is why I've loved it so much. The entire time that I've been consuming and talking about it and things like that. I am, I know that I'm a different kind of breed sometimes. I just do not want to be locked into anything. So it's good that they are, not just talking about having easy on, easy off, but actually designing in a way that gives customers the flexibility and the choice to be able to do that.
I think it's highlighted by maybe the product I talk about the most in meetings these days, Move, right?
Move is great.
That can take workloads from the edge to the data center to a colo for folks that are wanting to get out of the data center to the cloud, and even from the cloud being NC2 to the non-NC2 part of the cloud too, right? So like total application mobility there, right? Because the stats failing me, because again, see also jet lagged and overcaffeinated. Around how many workloads are going to get placed, but also then are considered to be non-optimal in like the following 12 months, right? Despite thinking our best thoughts around where should we put workloads and applications, right? We do our best, and then things have to change, right? And migration has to be part of that fabric. If we can make that easy within the platform, awesome. If that means off the platform too, yeah, I can't think of anything we've ever done that's even smelled like lock-in. And I'm with you, Harvey. Right? I would be zealous about fighting against that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've talked about this before. IT is always going to be all about change anyway. It will never just be one way and be that way forever. So you want to make sure that you're approaching everything with the ability to deal with change, because it is inevitably coming. You cannot avoid it. So
that's one of the that's one of the main tenets when you've got technology rapidly undergoing development, right? I mean, we've got new ideas, new capabilities just from the hardware cycles, let alone all of the innovation that's happening in software. Talking a little more about hardware, I mean, and your underlying choice. I mean, one of the choices that our customers are telling us often is that maybe it's not a choice, maybe it's a requirement at this point. They're not able to move today because they've made hardware commitments. And so I think this announcement for PowerFlex is the first external IP-based storage as a future is a compelling future. I mean, it's not here today, but we also heard from CEO and CTO that there's a commitment to IP-based storage, so IP-based external storage, and so that's really helpful for customers looking for an off-ramp or looking for choice. But there's also compute server commitments that have been made, so that helps the people who've got investments in storage, external storage. But what about the people with existing investments in, say, a VxRail? And that's where the other part of the announcement really helps, is certifying more hardware with both Cisco and Dell. It is a huge part of enabling a migration path for our customers. And so I don't really have a question there, but I mean, I was driving towards something and kind of.
I was excited to hear it. I love to see it because I'm sure we all eat, sleep, and breathe these conversations these days. It's really not a technological hurdle to re-platform. It's usually financial, right? Help me out with the problem I have today on the hardware that I have for maybe the next several years, right? And so the more ways we find to get to a well-architected solution that also does involve saying yes to more stuff, I love it.
Yeah, we dug a little more into the Cisco announcement after the keynote. Sounds like, many Cisco servers will be certified to run as compute nodes inside of the Nutanix ecosystem with AHV. That's a huge change. Yes, compute only nodes have existed, but they've always been part of a pretty confined HCL.
Yeah, it was maybe more targeted at a use case of just like, I have to have like license constraint for, very demanding workloads that want very few core counts, right? It wasn't kind of meant to be a general purpose, arbitrary hit every hammer with this nail. Sorry, you hit nails with hammers, not the other way around. Again, jet lag and over caffeinated. Right. So more, multi-purpose, right?
Yeah, we've seen it before, compute only nodes packaged inside of database specific sort of offerings and stuff, but this is a more general purpose application of that compute only.
I think it's going to be super exciting.
Yeah, I think it opens up a lot of new pathways. I know we've already talked about some customer use cases that may fit.
I was at a customer last night I was at dinner with a customer who only has us for VDI today and was super excited to hear about both these announcements around compute reuse and storage reuse as a dramatic adoption accelerator for him.
Which we have to talk a little bit about dinner last night. Like, we're in Barcelona, 3 Southern guys in Barcelona, right? And me and Harvey and one of our channel teams, shout out to Tommy if he's listening. We hop in a cab. Harvey finds this really cool restaurant with steak. And so we set off to this plaza and we show up at the plaza. We're a little lost, looking bewildered. And off to the side, Jirah, hi guys, how are you? Of all the places in Barcelona, right? We end up in the same place.
We both have impeccably, remarkably good taste and awesome luck.
So let me also add, that was the first time that we saw Jirah.
That is true. Yeah, the first time of the entire week we had actually seen him was last night. So that adds to the whole
hilarious set of events, I guess.
Yeah, happenstance.
Yeah.
That this week's been so jam-packed that there's so much more we can talk about. Let's talk a little bit about the app dev, Kubernetes, DevOps world. We're doing more and more. I'm having more conversations with our customers around this topic. So I loved seeing what we're getting from the acquisition of D2iQ. If you happen to know D2iQ, they were formerly known as Mesosphere, but I've run into them before when looking at different Kubernetes distributions. They're purists, right? They're very, very close to the open source, but they're giving good technology for enterprises to adopt Kubernetes. What's NKP about?
So Toby was on stage several times yesterday and today at the keynotes, and so founder and CEO for D2iQ, and it's been wonderful watching the platform integrate into the Nutanix platform and what it delivers to customers right around. Kind of zooming out, like today our customers know how to vend VMs to the business, right? Storage, file shares, load balancers, all these various kind of like IT widgets. And so now making it easy to now vend containers to the business as well. But with that wonderful portability, right, around this could be on-prem, this could be in the cloud, this could be both. This could even have a management layer that manages cloud-native VMs, cloud-native containers, right? So where the compute substrate running those containers is 100% cloud-native, but it's part of your cloud management and control plane, was awesome to hear. And then the other part that I really, of course, love, to your point, Philip, around like the opinionated stack of a well-architected container platform, the way that, and I've learned about this a lot, since the acquisition, the way that D2IQ runs their stack around saying a good Kubernetes deployment might be 30 different decisions around what are we going to use for all these various layers of the stack. And their approach is, we have an answer for that. You can use our choices for these 30 decision points. Or if you want to pick differently, that's fine. Use yours and you're still fully supported, right? So freedom of choice, but also simplicity and speed to market, speed to value when you want to just take an expert's opinion for it.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. Very early in the Kubernetes journey in my last role, we learned about those opinions, right? And those opinions matter, but there are a lot of them. And I think that's part of the complexity for people who are interested in adopting cloud native. There's also an alignment issue, right? And so where does this align?
There's people that want to be pioneers and want to figure these things out. There's people that just want the answers to the test, right? And that's totally valid too, right? If you're not in the business of doing software development and wanting let's try both and see which one works and figure out the pros and cons, sometimes you just want something to just work, and that's great too.
Yeah, and so total package, you get the just works.
Yep.
If you have opinions about what code repository or what registry you're going to use,
observability or ingress,
you can substitute those in,
yep.
and life is good.
Yeah.
What's the experience going to be like?
Well, I have to I have to take a pretty educated guess that the experience is going to be pretty awesome, because I can't imagine that we're going to stop focusing on customer delight now.
Well, and I think that's the thing, right?
Yep.
Calling it out from the demos we saw on stage, a lot of UI action, not talking about having to do a lot of this from command line, up till now.
Well, for a lot of container deployments, like the UI is maybe the Visio diagram, right? But yeah, putting an actual usable, a storefront on it is pretty cool. I mean, yes, of course, hitting what you're teeing up for me, right? The Nutanix simplicity, the Nutanix design is 100% there in spades.
Yeah, I would just, kind of add to that Nutanix has kind of made a living for itself by making complicated things be presented pretty easy. Have a nice little, user interface, have things set up in a way that is logical, makes sense, just allows for you to go in and accomplish things that are hard with easy pushes of a button. So I kind of would side with Jirah on this. I think
It's a safe bet.
The user experience is going to be pretty good.
Harvey, that was so nice.
This is what they do.
Pleasant, right?
That's what they do.
I'm so happy. And honestly, what you're talking about is them automating you out of the really unpleasant stuff. We were talking about this in the hallway earlier, but things like firmware updates. I mean, they're unpleasant. Nobody really loves doing firmware updates. Nobody really loves doing the LCM does that for us. So I think that to me is one of the huge takeaways. And when you're looking at and evaluating products, that should weigh in, because we're talking about adding an amount of complexity to your overall IT operations when you start talking about adopting Kubernetes and learning to run this stuff. And so how do you combat that increasing complexity? It's through simplified operations.
Yeah. Well, let me connect these two things. A lot of customers have heard me in person say things that like I say, a NIC firmware update or a BIOS update. As a practitioner, it's almost becoming more like a either net neutral or losing proposition, right? You either do it great and no one notices, or if anyone notices that you're doing firmware upgrades, it's probably a bad thing for you, right? So like there's no pats on the back like, oh, good job with those firmware updates last week, right? So it's in your best interest to have that automated by a system that's repeatable and predictable and leads 100%. To better outcomes. So now correlating NIC firmware updates, which has been my LCM go-to example for 5 years now, with stuff like, well, now like containerization stuff, like, do you really want to be hands on keyboard for this, or let the machine run the other machines? And it's probably better for you as the platform owner. So it's a great point.
So that's a good transition. As we talk about Kubernetes and things, we can transition into another big announcement from Nutanix. And it's something you've called Project Beacon, but now we have a slightly other name for it, Cloud Native AOS. is this a whole new AOS?
I think it's a component of it, right? So yeah, I'm thinking back to recording a similar podcast with Harvey last year at Chicago. We're now 2 for 2
Yes.
for the in-person podcast recordings at .next, which is awesome. So we talked about it being Project Beacon, not Product Beacon, because it's going to be a multi-year delivery.
Right.
But fundamentally, with the true north being offering customers like a platform as a service, a PaaS style outcome. And so one pillar of that for sure was unveiled today with the Nutanix AOS, which is like our storage and management framework, which is always run in virtual machines on physical servers on lots of hypervisors over the years, now running in containers, in Kubernetes, in cloud platforms, right? So that leads to amazingly interesting outcomes, right? Around, it's cool, like I said before, okay, great, multi-cloud container control plane, neat. But my applications have this stuff called data, and data is very sticky. And our founder says data has gravity.
Well, data's not important.
Right? Yeah, who needs the data? And so how do I move the data around to match my applications, especially in this brave new world of containers, right? Where sure, the binary that runs the application is in a repository, it's easy to go get, but the data that it cares about might only be in one place at the moment. And so, yeah, so surprise, like AOS coming to containers now means that stuff like my Nutanix native replication and snapshot technology now can follow me probably basically anywhere. It's going to be super interesting.
Yeah, and I've already been on the Tech Center website today looking at this because this to me, I think has huge implications for our future.
Yes.
And the first iteration currently in tech preview is part of Nutanix Unified Storage version 5. And that's the files capability that can run natively inside of AWS. And so I had lots of questions, but I went out and I looked at this. And so it looks like you run FSVMs, file server VMs, just like you would on your cluster. And then on the back end, you're consuming enterprise block storage, EBS, and S3 object store inside of AWS.
Yeah.
That to me is a fundamentally different way than we've approached, because it's always taught through the CVM, the controller VM on your cluster.
Mm-hmm.
This opens a lot of new avenues in the future.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's always been ways to do stuff like I want DR for my files in the cloud. That used to be an NC2. Pretty soon that'll mean not a requirement for like going buying bare metal nodes in the cloud to run Nutanix clusters to run NC2, then to run files on top of that, right? So even our dogmatic belief in we have to simplify can mean like let's take the NC2 layer out of needing to run files in the cloud.
Right. Smart DR still plays.
Yeah.
You set up the policies the same way. Your operations don't change. It's just you've masked underneath the covers what's going on. You've got a compatibility layer.
So, and even I thought about jumping in before when Harvey talked about complexity in the system, because one of my mentors here taught me, right, that any system that does anything interesting for the business is going to have inherent complexity. So it's not that we remove it, it's that we own more of it, right? We take it off the customer's plate and say, you get simplified experience, we will do the hard work to take on the complexity on our part. Versus being like, it's like you can go buy a car versus here's the pile of parts. It's a kit car, surprise. Go build. If you want a car, here it is. You can have that outcome.
I want to have that car after
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, I kind of liken it to what we do as well as customer partners. It's like give me a simplified view of what you want to accomplish, and we'll either do the hard part for you or we'll help you do the hard part.
Exactly.
So it's sort of that same concept, just in a nice, pretty GUI that doesn't look like Phil.
Wow, shots fired. Sorry, Phil. I think you're a wonderful UI, Phil.
Gotta love it.
This is cool. I'm excited to watch where cloud native AOS goes in the future.
Yes.
Project Beacon again is a framework developed to help us do more services, basically, and consume services more easily. It's a platform that's got legs on its own, so it's good to see promises delivered too. So wasn't there on that podcast last year, but
Not bitter about it at all.
You're here this time. All right.
Let's see. What else do we have from the keynotes? I think we talked about GPT in a box. There's a ton of things happening there. One other thing, another promise is kept. Nutanix Central, first announced last year, now general availability.
Totally.
The manager of all managers.
And also, as we highlighted some of the really cool stuff that's now come to the platform, even in the last maybe week, right, with our latest 6.8 release, right, stuff like the V4 APIs, more RBAC controls, the secure snapshots, right, where like now the prevention for deletion, even from like a admin compromise scenario, right, which like we want no one ever be in, but if you do find yourself in that scenario, that ability to have a policy that governs your data security. But even like in like one of the LCM breakouts today, there was discussion around like now that we have V4 APIs at the table now we can do even more fun stuff like get to work on multi-cluster LCM, right? I go to one place and I control my entire fleet of Nutanix. That's going to be really great to see.
Yeah, for sure. We also talked about the adoption accelerators, and I like the way that is phrased because getting people to the platform, in an easier way. We talked about VxRail, we talked about the Cisco partnership, but vSAN ready nodes in addition to VxRail. That's another enabler. So different sales motion, and so that's exciting to see working with other partners to bring that to bear, because at the end of the day, those hardware nodes should look very similar to what a Nutanix hardware node looks like.
Right.
There was a little shout out for sustainability. My wife would kill me if I didn't include this. The Green Warrior, my wife Jen. You've got some new power consumption monitoring calculators, things like that have made it into the NCM platform. Those help you with, I guess, demonstrating back power efficiency and consumption for your sustainability initiatives.
Yeah, I mean, when you own the nodes and operate them in your own data center, right? Of course, there's variability in the consumption, but you want to have both the planned consumption, but also know what the reality did look like. And one of the things that like Lee Caswell mentioned from stage today was like, once this data exists, it's easy to imagine other models getting built that now inform things like workload placement based on suitability, right, of the requirements and of the needs and the resources. Or I can take that one step further in my head and say, like, what about even like time of day mobility based off of like it's more efficient to run it at this time here, then I can move. If I can move the app more easily, I can move it when it makes sense to other places that the application can run. So yeah, it's great to just be able to get quantification of that variable and put that into the equation of where should I run my stuff.
Yeah, and again, that goes back to choice, and that's a huge enabler for choice.
I'm sensing a theme.
Yeah, sensing a theme. It's funny. It's easy to point these out when we talk about Nutanix because you're incredibly consistent with those things, and it's good to partner with someone that has that. It's beneficial to us as a partner. It's beneficial to our customers at the end of the day. So I guess we'll wrap things up on that note. I think it's a good place to leave everyone. It's been an incredible week so far. We're sitting in a room all together, which is really nice. That doesn't normally happen.
Absolutely delightful.
We're about to go to the wrap party too.
We are.
I thought about it a couple times. You said it's been a week. It's been like 32 hours. It's been a week and 32 hours. Absolutely jam packed.
It has been. Yeah, it's been nonstop.
Yes.
But a lot of highlights. This has been a longer episode for us because of so many highlights. But Jirah, Harvey, really appreciate you joining me again for another episode. And thanks for listening. Next year, why don't you reach out to XenTegra? We'll try to get you to .next so you can have the same experience. One of our many value adds that we try to put into your world. And so reach out to your XenTegra account rep. We'll get you signed up and hopefully we'll see you at the next .next. I also want to shout out that if you want to see more detail about this, .next is going on tour in the US and around the world. So we've got dates and stuff. They're available out on the Nutanix.com / I think it's .next/on tour. And you can get signed up. They start next month, and would love to see you out at one of those. I know I've already got scheduled to be in person with a couple of those dates. So get out there, learn more, and we hope to see you. And until next time, thanks so much for joining us.